I was in burnout, stress, chronic fatigue, all the things because this business wasn't fulfilling me and I was still having to show up. I worked with a lot of children with autism spectrum disorder, but part of me always was looking for more. I just wanted more. And through that, my company fell apart. That was my dark night of the soul. That was my reckoning. I had to let that company go. And by this point, I went, you know what? They're not meant to be in my life anymore. I'm not meant to have this business anymore, and I need to sell this company. And I was meditating with my coach, and this voice, he goes, what is your heart telling you right now? And this voice came up, non-negotiable, quit. And I was like, I need to quit. So I quit. I get put a date. But as soon as I put a date, all these opportunities started to come into my lap. All these things started to happen. I had money popping up from random places. It's just a simple kinesiology thing of show me yes, show me no. But that can be enough to help start to anchor in you, trusting your intuition and trusting the inner voice and knowing how to discern between the voice in your head and the voice from your heart.
Hey everyone, it's Sophia from Sacred You. Thank you so much for being here. A quick message before we dive into today's conversation. You may have been watching the podcast videos but have not had a chance to hit that subscribe button. So if you've ever gained value from our videos, from our conversations, it would mean so much to us if you would hit that subscribe button below right now, or even just give us a like. And what that means is not only does it allow us to grow our subscriber base, but it allows us to bring in more important guests for you to listen to. And you will be one of the first ones to be notified. So please hit that subscribe button and let's get started on today's conversation. Welcome to the Pathways to Wellbeing podcast. My name is Sophia from Sacred You. With me today, and much more importantly, I have the absolute honour of chatting to the beautiful Catherine. Welcome, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sophia.
I am truly excited because not only are we going to be talking about your book, definitely want to get into your book, but we're having a conversation that really rings true to me and so many people. And that's all about the quiet voice that leads us and how we can really trust that voice to be a guide for us, really trust. And Catherine, you're a leadership coach, an intuitive healer. You're also the host, I have to say, of Sacred You's Empowered Entrepreneurs Tribe. I have to put that in because I'm so excited about that. And you're a mother and now also an author, and you help other women reclaim their voice through leadership and healing. What I'd love to know from you, Catherine, just to start, is tell us how you got to where you are now, right? Especially walking away from your other jobs and rebuilding your life. And really, what first led you to recognize that quiet voice within as your true compass?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. All right, let's go. I guess the biggest thing is that I've always had this kind of knowing and not knowing what it was. So even I would just know stuff before I knew things, and I didn't know what that actually meant. So I still remember this example where my sister jumped in the car after school and she's, you'll never guess what happened to my friend today. I said, oh, she fell off a horse and she broke her arm. And she goes, oh, did you see her? That's exactly what happened. And I was like, and my mum and I are like exchanging this look. And later I found out why my mum and I were exchanging this look. I didn't know why my mum was looking at me weird. But it was like all this knowing, and I would always follow my gut. So my original career was as a speech language pathologist. And about 2 years in, I was like, oh, I need to start my own business. I need to do my own thing. I was working for these two lovely ladies, and I was like, no, I want to do my own thing. And right when I thought that, I actually got offered part of the half of the partnership from one of my bosses. And it was a very interesting time because I wasn't allowed to disclose anything to my other boss. So it was all very weird. But my gut was like, ah, yeah, this is what I need to be doing. And so many people told me I couldn't do it because I was too young. And being the little rebel I am, I was like, I'll show you. So then my business partner and I, like, I was really good at following my gut and I could see all the gaps in the market. And all of a sudden, this little business went to a massive business, and we had 8 full-time therapists, we had reception staff, and we were a 7-figure business. But my business partnership fell apart. And I had to choose to leave that. But in the meantime, the voice in my head was still saying, you have to have your own thing. So I was trusting that. And so I built my own company in the background from the ground up. And it was always second because my main priority was the partnership. And as our relationship started to deteriorate, I was very grateful I had this backup. So was built that up and ended up being a 6-figure business, got quite big, but I never felt fulfilled. So I never felt gratification, and I always felt like I was doing it for other people, and so I would keep trying to get to the next goal, the next big thing, and I was never satisfied. And I still remember my ex-business partner, she said I could do this job every day for the rest of my life, and I'm like, oh, I couldn't. It was just, and it wasn't that I wasn't good at my job. Like, I love my job. I didn't love my job, but I loved my clients and I loved working with kids and I loved having this deeper connection and seeing more than what was in front of me, more than what their diagnosis was. I worked with a lot of children with autism spectrum disorder. And at one point, that was nearly my whole caseload, which can be very challenging because it's like nonstop. But it slowly evolved. And, but part of me always was looking for more. I just wanted more. And as I started to pull on that thread, I was going to my naturopath every week because I was in burnout, stress, chronic fatigue, all the things because this business wasn't fulfilling me and I was still having to show up. And I built it in such a way that it revolved around me and everything had to come through me. I didn't have much trust for other people. I believed I couldn't ask for help and it all had to come through me. So even to the point my husband was helping me with the phones and he got over it because he got sick of people being really demanding and abusive and everything else. So then I took that back over too. So I was doing everything, which is not a way to run a business. And of course had insomnia. Of course I had burnout. Of course I was in chronic stress. But I walked into this appointment and when I made this appointment, these other offerings came up from his partner. And I said, what's this? And he goes, oh, yeah, this is Carly's her name. Carly's got all these offerings. He goes, you should do it. And I was like, okay. So I booked in. And what it ended up being was my spiritual reawakening. And so every 2 weeks, I went back and she would channel instructions for me, give me guidance. We'd do like meditations, we'd open up all these sorts of things. And I had come home, Sophia. I was like, oh my goodness, this is what's been missing in my life. This is where I'm meant to be. And we worked together for a year. So everyone went back every 2 weeks for a year. And through that, my company fell apart. That was my dark night of the soul. That was my reckoning. I had to let that company go. And for people who think, oh, is it just one night? No, no, it's not. I say it's round one, round two. So my round one was I had 3 staff resign in a week. Now, it's really hard in Australia to find allied health staff. So having 3 resign in a week, I was like, oh my goodness. And I actually was trying to pull back at this point because my health wasn't great. So I'm on a ball on the floor, broken down because I'm like, how am I meant to find these replacements? How am I meant to cover this caseload? I'm meant to be pulling back. I don't want to let these clients down. Everything was about everybody else, not me. And so I'm on the floor, and my husband and my son are like, it's okay, you can get up. And my guides are like, you can get up, keep going. And I'm like, anyway, so I got up, kept going. And a month later, still hadn't replaced these staff. Another 3 in 1 week resigned. And by this point, I was pretty freaking angry. So I'm out there in this rock I go meditator yelling at the universe saying, what are you doing? I'm trying to do step into my spirituality. I can't create that. Rah, 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 rah. And then a month later, another 3 resigned in a week. And by this point, I went, you know what? They're not meant to be in my life anymore. I'm not meant to have this business anymore, and I need to sell this company. And I remember meditating and going up to like my guides, and they're giving me a slow clap to congratulate me for finally coming this full circle and coming and realizing that's what I needed to do. Meanwhile, my husband's like, I told you 6 months ago you should have sold this business. And I was like, I know, but at the same time, you have to come to it in your own timing and you have to go through these things to let it go. Because if anyone started a business from scratch, it's like your baby. You've nourished it, you've put your energy into it, and it can be really hard to let that go, especially when you have an expectation of what you think it should look like rather than what it actually is. So, through that, I sold my company and then I was faced with my own worth story because I got all this money for selling my company, but in my brain, I didn't work hard for it, even though I clearly had done it for like years. And so then I subconsciously just all got pushed away. Like I still don't know exactly where it all went. I could probably sit there and analyze it, but at the same time, this money that was meant to tide us over so I didn't feel like I had to work every day and not be able to have a break. And then at the same time, I had to stay on with my company. That was part of the deal of selling it. And the company ended up not getting as many clients because my boss was going through his own stuff. He turned off the phones, so he energetically said no more. But I was working on commission, so then I'm like, oh my goodness, like how am I going to get new clients? The phone's not even on. This is really hard. So then we were living paycheck to paycheck. So then was like, there's something going on here. I need to go through all this stuff. And it was layer upon layer of beliefs upon all these sorts of things. It's no, I shouldn't have to work this hard to allow abundance to flow in because our natural state is abundance. So as I unpacked all that and I got really savvy, I went to a lot of free stuff, like a lot of free stuff, and I would take it all in and I would apply it and I would just keep going and keep going. And then I met a man who essentially became my coach. But it was when it was trusting that inner voice at this point as, no, you need to work with him. I'm like, no, I do need to work with him. And I know I can feel in my heart we're aligned. And I got up in the middle of the night to show up to his masterclass. And I'm so grateful I did because he's in Malaysian time. So it started at 11 p.m. and I go to bed at 8. I'm like 8:30 because I get up at 5. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go to bed, get up for this masterclass. And I stayed till 1 a.m. And at the end, he made this offering for his new program that he was soft launching and it was in Ring It. And I went, hang on, what's that in Australian? And so I converted it and it ended up being like something so manageable for 3 months of coaching. And it was the amount of money we had in our bank account, so I could actually purchase it. And I was like, I need to do this. So I did it. But then the doubt came up. Oh my gosh, what's my husband going to say? I spent the last of our money in my bank account to sign up for a coach. And anyway, so I was excited, but at the same time, I'm like, ah! So I went down and my husband woke up and because I was so excited and he's like, how did it go? And I said, this happened. I said, and then he made this offer for this much. And he goes, I hope you signed up. And I said, oh, I'm so glad you said that because I did it. I didn't ask permission first. And that was part of my problem too. I was always asking permission to invest in myself. And then when I started working with him, I had this self-belief again and I created all these new habits and I started getting stuff done. Like I finished a book, which I've still got to work on and do more work with, but then I wrote another book, which we're going to talk about today. I all of a sudden was attracting coaching clients. I had all this money coming in. So it was this massive shift. And I think since October last year to now, so we're in nearly end of June, I think I've honestly gone through 6 identity shifts and it's still changing because I recently quit my job. And this is where the inner voice comes in. So, part of being in chronic stress for so long, and it came up multiple times, and the universe does this. So, if you keep hearing the same message and ignore it, it is going to happen to you. So, for me, I started working with this lady on right frequencies. So, it's frequencies for your body. And she said, I'm so glad you came in because your body still hasn't cleared out all that stress yet. And if you kept going and doing what you were doing, you would have ended up with an autoimmune. And I'm like, that makes sense because your body can only function at high level for so long. And in the energetic world, once you get an autoimmune, it's actually really hard to reverse. Like before that, it's okay. But once you get that autoimmune, you can, but it's a lot more work. And then I met with another couple who I met through my podcast, and they said, you need to stop doing what you're doing. You're going to end up with an autoimmune. And I was like, okay, it's 2 warnings. And then I had this deep need since January that I had to quit my job. And because it wasn't fulfilling me, it wasn't letting me be a mom, it wasn't letting me be in my light. And I remember I was handing my resignation to my boss and I put a condition on it. And you never put conditions on things. And I put this condition on it and I said, when our house sells, I'll leave. And I knew when I was handing it over, I should have written, I'm finishing the 30th of April. Anyway, so of course our house didn't sell because I put a condition on it happening. And then I was like going, no, I can't keep doing this. My heart's breaking. Like I just was not okay. And then I started getting this numbness. So I had this numbness appear in my right left pinky and it got what it was getting worse. And then I couldn't feel half my face. And I was like, this is not good. And I knew I was numbing myself to go to work. I was numbing myself to be in this position I knew my soul didn't want to be to anymore. And it came to the end of April and I was meditating with my coach in like our group session. And this voice, he goes, what is your heart telling you right now? And this voice came up, non-negotiable, quit. And I was like, I need to quit. Like, I need to put a date on it and I need to quit and I need to quit soon or this isn't going to be good. My husband had a meltdown because he's like, we're going to get the money from? Like, we've got this mortgage. And I was like, I don't know. I need to quit. So I did. And it's been an interesting month writing that through. So I quit, I get put a date, but as soon as I put a date, all these opportunities started to come into my lap. All these things started to happen. I had money popping up from random places, and I still don't know where it's going to go yet, but it's that I have this space to allow that to come in. Learning to trust that enough too and block out the outside noise is probably the hardest thing, especially when it's big decisions like that. I find coming back to that voice within you and trusting it and honoring it, despite you having no plan and not knowing where you're going to go, it takes courage. And that's something we have to learn and be brave and actually jump into the unknown rather than sitting there and just staying in the same loop. Because if you ignore those signs, that's when you end up in tragedy. I probably would have ended up with an autoimmune. And then the funny thing is, for 2 weeks after I gave my date, the numbness disappeared. It came back, but different, and it wasn't as bad. And then the first day that I was mum and my mum role, and I was still doing my other things, but my priority was my mum role, the numbness completely disappeared and it has not come back. So for me, I'm like, thank you for validating me. And even though people were saying it's all in your head, it's about your mindset, you block all of that out and you got to follow what your heart wants to do.
You do. And thank you. Thank you ever so much for sharing that. And right now, I'd just like to just take that moment and really honor you for sharing what you've been through, sharing all about those dark nights, those phases, and everything else that has happened to you. And to honoring yourself, Catherine. That is such a big step. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd love to know from your experience, what you've gone through is such an inspiration for everyone out there who is watching or listening. But what do you think causes people, most people, to ignore or to distrust that inner voice?
Mm.
Because we've all got it, but we don't listen to it.
I think it's fear. I feel it's fear. And that my coach, Kyron, he talks about immunity to change. It's the change because the change leads to unknown. And a lot of the time, that fear that comes up, if there's excitement and fear and there's more excitement than fear, then you're on the right path. But if there's more fear than excitement, then you're probably not on the right path. And that's how you discern between the two. But there's always going to be fear. Like it was scary quitting my job, not knowing where the money will come from, and having to flip roles when my husband went back to work, and all these changes and everything. But at the same time, it had to happen because I had to honor that voice. And I knew if I didn't, then what was I going to lose? I keep losing myself to the numbness and then possibly end up with that autoimmune that kept popping into my field. So you always have to sit there and think, what am I losing not trusting it? And what am I losing not have the courage to take that step to do that? Do I want to stay in my mundane life that's not honoring me? Or am I going to take that step and be brave and go towards that? You only get one chance at this life. I want to say it that way. You only get one chance at this life. Why not go embrace and run into all the things, learn to fail forward and actually love the life you're living instead of wishing the days away because I'm looking at the clock going, oh my gosh, is it home time yet? Or is it, do I have to do this? Or choose something that you want to do and that lights you up because that is going to be more fun. And then the mundane tasks, you don't care. I'm quite happy doing the washing and doing the doing the dishwasher. And I love baking. I've rediscovered how much I love baking. I bake every day. We have surplus of cookies and bread and all these fun things. It's really honoring that and trusting what opens up from that. So for me, being a mum brought this peace back in my life I didn't realize I was craving because there was chaos going on inside me working with everyone else's kids and not getting to work with my own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that. I really feel that. And it is, for a lot of people, it is a big step of trusting that voice and overcoming the fear, just letting go and really trusting that we are looked after. And when we let go of one thing, more things will appear. So thank you. Good stuff.
Exactly.
And what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions that you've seen in the spiritual community, especially when we talk about alignment? What does that actually look like?
I had that interview the other day and we were like, what are the common red flags? So it's a big thing as part of why I wrote the book is seeing people giving information that impacts people's lives and not weighing up because they'll just say it offhand and it's actually not true. This happened for a past staff member of mine when she went to see this medium and this medium gave her this information which was partially true, but because she knew it at the time, it actually led her to a state of depression because she didn't weigh up what it meant long term sharing this information. So it wasn't for the highest and greatest good. And then this person went back to the same medium. I'm like, seriously, you're going back after that whole experience, but okay. And she asked this question, and by that point, my gifts were like really full on, like they turned up. And I said, that's not true. I was actually really blunt. I said, it's not true. Your grandfather's standing here with me right now. What you're telling me is complete fabrication. It's not, wasn't for you. And it's not true. I said, this is the information I've got. And then sure enough, because she'd lost something. And then sure enough, a few months later, she messaged me in the middle of the night and she said, I'm sorry it's late, but you were right. The thing I lost showed up and it was exactly where you said it was. And I said, okay, here's the rest of this. And it was like this beautiful thing, but she had to get to this point to actually re-find it. Because sometimes when we lose things, it's not because it's not meant to be in our life anymore, but because we have to go through some lessons before it comes back. So it's even with friends, family, and that sort of thing too. So that was one of the major things. And then the gurus. The people that say you have to come through me and everything's through me, and they don't actually teach you the skills to empower yourself to be able to access your own gifts. And it's always through them. And this codependence, which isn't healthy, where we all can access gifts on our own. Yes, we can still have coaches or mentors to support and challenge us to help us keep growing. But in the end, you want to have the power to be able to tap into your own energy, to tap into your ability to have your beautiful gifts, whatever that is that you're being bestowed upon you. There's this dependence as well. And then I've had experiences where I went for a massage, like a crystal therapy massage, and I left and felt so violated because she'd taken my energy. And I was like, oh, what is this? And it was just starting opening up my gifts and things. And I rang my mentor and I was like, this weird thing just happened. She goes, yeah, you have to be really mindful who you let touch to come into your energy. And then there's cults as well. So there's that cult kind of energy where you get pulled in. So all these kind of things were happening, but when someone else takes away your ability to ask questions, so if you ask a question and they don't want to answer it because they genuinely, their ego gets in the way, rather than them going, actually, I'm not sure about that. Let me look more into that, or that's not my field, that can be a red flag in itself. Or they promise you that they're going to do all these things for you and then nothing's happening. And so there's all these kind of things that you have to learn to get to know yourself better, because when you're working with another person on whatever level, as a practitioner and also a person seeking a practitioner, you need to be aware of what your energies and how you feel before and after. And also, I would say a few days after, because sometimes there's this effect where people, like, you're in this high energy state, and then the next day, like, oh, that was weird. I thought that was really good, and now I feel really icky afterwards. So you have to check in and go, is it because things are shifting, or because there was some weird kind of NLP moment or something like that in there? It's about learning to come into alignment with you and trusting how that aligns at a deeper level. And that was the part of how this book came through, was because as I was finishing my journey with my spiritual mentor, who's now like one of my really good friends because our relationship shifted. But I asked, how can I channel for people? And is there things I needed to know? And so then part of that channel was I got given these guidelines, got given these pillars, the 7 pillars, and then they evolved, because with anything from source, everything evolves when you start to dive deeper into it. But that's where it was birthed. And I sat on it, so that was probably the end of 2021. So I sat on it for a little while, to the point at the start of this year, I got a kick in my back. Like, I actually moved forward, and they're like, you need to write this book. And I was like, okay, I'm just finishing. They're like, you need to write this book. I'm like, but I'm just finishing that. You need to write this book. I was like, all right, I'll write this book. So it ended up being the priority, and it ended up getting done. And here it is today.
Especially when you get kicks in the back.
Mm,
Definitely priority.
exactly.
Thank you for sharing that. And I do definitely want to go into about your book. But before we do, just one last question is, why do you think people wait so long? We've all got our intuition. Everyone has. But why do you think people wait till they're completely burnt out or in crisis before they start listening?
Because we're being so conditioned to think with our head first. And we listen to everyone else around us, and it's really hard to block out the noise. And it is really hard, especially when you're going against the grain and you're doing something that your soul's telling you to do, and everyone else around you is telling you that you're crazy, that you can't do it, who are you, whatever it might be. And it can be lonely for a little bit. And this is why it's really important to have a really good support team around you. There's so much evidence now showing that we should not be thinking with our head first. The HeartMath Institute, I talk about them all the time, but the evidence they have is beautiful, which actually shows there's more decision-making receptors in your heart and your gut than there is in your brain. And in fact, the most in your heart. So we should be checking in with our heart first, seeing what our soul, our inner voice, our intuition wants to whisper to us, then check in with our gut. Is this safe? And then check in with our head, because our head will start to kick in because it just likes the same thing. Our head likes us to be complacent. Our head likes us to stay where we are because our ego is afraid of the unknown. But when you can still step through that and get to know that the difference between that inner voice and the voice in your head, it doesn't really win out. It will still be there. Don't get me wrong, especially if you're tired, you're fatigued, you're unwell, you're going through a crap time, that voice will turn up because it does. But at the same time, that's when you go, I need to go to bed. And I do not make any decisions when I'm in that super fatigued state, because it will not be a good decision, because you're not listening from your heart at that point. You actually just need to rest and then wake up and then make a decision. Like, I've got this 100% yes email I need to reply to in my inbox, but at the same time, I've been tired, so I want to actually sit there and be in the right mindset before I reply to it, to make sure I understand everything, because it's an agreement kind of thing before I write back. Plus, we're heading to Mercury retrograde if we're not there already, and you have to triple check things.
You certainly do. And I agree with you. Speaking my language, Catherine, when, especially if you're tired, you've got to be in the right mindset when you're writing things, speaking to people, whatever it is. If you aren't, then things go wrong. And we know that afterwards. And you go, why didn't I go to sleep? Why did I do that now? But it's not listening. to our inner guidance. So thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about your book. Show us about your book and tell us all about that. The Pillars for Life. What are the pillars and how do we start to practice?
Yeah, so this book's been a journey and I had to learn a lot too. It's weird because I channeled the whole thing, but at the same time, I had to get an understanding around some of the things I channeled. So there is a reference list in the back. So before people are like, how did she channel it when there's a reference list? Because I had to increase my understanding in order to write from a perspective that would be received by everyone reading it as well. So as I started to write it, I had a general gist of what each pillar kind of was. So the pillars themselves, they're given this framework because it's like you think of when you're building a building, right? You need your structural beams that hold everything up, and that's the idea of the pillars. And the biggest thing in this book is it's always your choice. It's always your choice how you want to implement these in your life. And that's why they're guidelines. It's a guide. It's not a rule set. It's not a fixed thing. It's you use your own discernment and you see how you need to apply them into your life. So they have the seven pillars, which is divine will, which is remembering that we always have a freedom to choose. There's authenticity, which is such a buzzword, and it's actually how to be your authentic self, not what the media portrays. It's actually trusting that. There's presence, willingness to change, which I think is my favorite. There's spiritual responsibility, equality. And when I say equality, it's that all souls are equal no matter what. And that includes when you're working with guides or beings that you might be channeling or anything like that. They should never make you feel less than. You might feel like, wow, I'm channeling this person. But if you feel less than, there's some weird relationship going on there. They always make you feel equal. And the last one is accountability. So then I'd finished got these pillars. And then a friend of mine said, no, there's actually nine things. And I was like, oh. No, there's 10. I said, there's three more. So then they added in the groundwork, which is being connected to Mother Earth, the foundation, which is knowing yourself as well as others. I think I got them in the right order. Sometimes I confuse them because I just see Mother Earth. Hang on. Oh no, yes, I'm right. And then the keystone. So a keystone, if no one knows what a keystone is, if you ever look at a stone bridge, there's like a keystone that has to hold all the bridge pieces together. That is the central part. If you pull that keystone out, everything falls down and nothing stays up. So the keystone is remember that we're human. And that is such an important thing because so often, and especially in the age that we're in at the moment with the talk of AI and all that sort of thing, you have to come back to your humanity and you have to accept that we have human experiences and emotions, and there is a reason for all of that. And then as I'm writing this book, each chapter adds on an extra bit. So it might be talking about ego versus intuition, it might be talking about the law of one, it might be talking about spiritual hygiene. So all these sorts of things come through. And then it kept evolving. So then it was like, okay, now these pillars are attached to a chakra. And we don't do just the seven in the body, we go outside as well. And an auric layer. So I had to go learn about auric layers. So then we have auric layers. Oh, and there's a crystal. I'm like, okay. So there was a crystal connection. Oh, and by the way, there's also a guide per se, it might be an angel, it might be a god or a goddess, a deity, whatever. There's also that, and a spirit animal and a plant ally. And I was like, okay. So in I went and it just evolved. And then through this process of writing, I also realized how much I hate editing. So I hired an editor by this point because I'm like, I need an editor to help me. And she said, I realize that you put these practice examples in. You need one in every chapter. So then every chapter has some sort of meditation or practice you can do to actually anchor these principles into your life. So there's like Ho'oponopono in there, there's field clearing, there's heart connection, there's how to ground, there's all these practical tips, which you might know already, but I always like looking at what other people do because it might add something to your toolbox that you thought, oh, I haven't done that before. Let's see how that evolves. That's how it all came together. And it was through that development that I learned a lot, but it was really anchoring that all these beautiful things could be put together by spirit, by source, and be channeled in such a way. And then I was trying to do the cover with, and I was like, oh, no, I couldn't get the columns right. So we're trying to use AI. This for me, I still use AI. We're trying to, but it just couldn't get it right. So I'm like, all right, I need an illustrator or a graphic designer. I need help to get what's in my head onto paper. So then I reached out to a friend in my coaching group and she put me in contact with this person. I was like, not quite right. Then she sent me this other person. I was like, oh my gosh, like I just loved the colors that he had in his work. Like it was the colors I saw happening. I was like, great. And so I sent him a table. And what he did was beyond my expectations, which he took the animal and the plant for each pillar and turned it into sacred geometry design and put it in the design of the pillar. And that is like what you can see on the front of the book. And it's just, it was so beyond my comprehension that I was like, this is amazing. Like, I can't even. And then I was telling one of my clients about it, and she said, you should turn it into a coloring book. And I was like, oh my goodness. So, it will become a mindful meditation coloring book with all the pillars. That's in the works later on. But that's just how it evolved. And it was like really trusting. And if I hold that up, you can see it.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
see the beautiful wolf and
I,
then the sandalwood, I think that is down the bottom. It was just beyond what I could comprehend. And I guess that's when spirit has a hand in things, right? It goes beyond what you ever expect it to do.
absolutely. And I totally agree. Yes, when spirit has a hand in things, you never know where it's going to end up. And sometimes you go, whoa, where is this going? Oh my God. Again, congratulations. What a journey. How long did that whole process take you?
I started writing it in January and I think I finished writing it, I want to say March or April, because that's when I got my editor. And then she came back to me with her developmental edits. And then I sent it back. And then it came back again. She was away. So it came back in May. And the funniest thing was she actually copy edited it. And I wrote to her and I said, weren't you going to do a lot of developmental edits? She goes, oh no, you took on my feedback so well and actually integrated everything I said for you to do. She goes, there's nothing else that needs to be done. I just copy edited it. And I was like, oh, thank you. This is why it's good to take on feedback, right? But then I had to wait for the illustrator, and he had the black and white versions done, but he hasn't finished coloring them. And I said, it's okay, I just want the black and white because I knew it was going to go into a book anyway. And he said, no, I want to color them. I said, that's okay. I'll use the color when I do workshops, when I teach more on this. And as it evolves, I said, but right now I just want the black and white. So then, yeah. And then once I did that, it was a matter of just trying to get the cover design, which my husband did, which was really cool, and putting that all together. And then the hardest things normally when you do any sort of cover design thing is you have to pick a font. There's too much choice. And then you unlock the premium Canva and there's even more choices. So, but then, yeah, and then I published it on the solstice, which was amazing. So that was the date that I picked and I achieved that. And then I'm just trusting and getting on podcasts like this one, for example, and sharing it because it needs to be shared. It needs to be brought into the world because otherwise I wouldn't have got the kick in the back to do it.
No, that kick. Thank you for that kick. Whoever provided Catherine with that kick, we are grateful for it because I'm certainly going to be getting your book. It sounds very interesting and very inspiring. And I'd love to know, Catherine, for everyone out there who's listening, you mentioned your 7 pillars. Where does someone start?
This is the thing. The pillars are all integrated and interwoven, so you can't have one without the other. But I guess if you're looking at the chapters, this is where you can use your intuition and go, oh, I feel pulled to start with chapter 5, or I feel pulled to chapter 6, whatever it is. And then you can start with that. Because often, wherever your attention gets pulled, that's where you need to start. That's where you need to focus on. For me, I say willingness to change is a really powerful one because we get so stuck in our beliefs and so stuck in our ways. And that's why it's my favorite pillar. And it's actually attached to the heart chakra too, which is amazing because your heart's always evolving. That's where your inner voice comes from as well. That's where we make our decisions. But willingness to change can come on so many levels. It can be, all right, I've outgrown this person in my life. I need to be willing to change that. It might be a practitioner, it might be a partner, it might be a family, it might be friends. You have to be willing to change that. It's you're learning something new and it changes your whole perspective on what you've been doing. You have to be willing to change that too. So there's so many facets with that. If you're someone that often likes to be stuck in your ways and to control everything, that chapter is probably a good place to start and then work your way back from there. And just learning to tap into your heart. It doesn't have to be hard. And a lot of people will shy away because it says meditation, but meditation is just a way to connect in and get some stillness and quiet happening. It can be any way you want. It can be maybe you want to go out for a walk to get that stillness. Maybe you want to garden. Maybe you want to go for a swim, whatever it might be. So these are just guided practices to give you an idea of how to step in. And the plan is to have audio recordings and an audio book attached to that because someone read the book and said, "Oh my gosh, this would be amazing to have it as a recorded thing I could listen to." And I was like, it's in the works. It's in the works. It was my biggest thing was let's get this book out because it had to get out. So now it's all the extra bits that will come from that. But the more you can learn to just even breathe and learn to breathe slower and be mindful of your breathing, that's a form of meditation in itself too.
Thank you. And yes, all the extra bits, your audio bits, the colouring book, the what, everything else will definitely come. I can see them coming in really soon. So thank you for sharing that. And for you, Catherine, how has this book helped you? What have you learned? How has your life changed in the last 6 months?
It's so funny because I was talking about this with my coach yesterday because we were celebrating my month because I've had a big month from quitting my job to releasing my book to doing all these things and becoming a mum again. I've never stopped being a mum, but my main role being a mum. And it was the realization that I did this despite not even caring what anyone would think of me, not even caring what people thought about what came through. I just knew I had to get it out into the world. And it gave me more trust in my intuition. It gave me more trust in my inner voice. And even as I was writing it, the confirmations that would come back. So I interviewed a lot of people I had as podcast guests and I said, "Hey, I'm writing this book. What would you want to see in it?" Or I'd reach out to practitioners I've worked with. What would you want to see in it? And most of the time, I'd already had that in the book. I'd already talked about it, or I'd already had a practice attached to it. And it was this continued reinforcement. So for me, it was a beautiful way of trusting myself, but then also getting that feedback that through trusting that, all these things aligned. And then it was also this willingness to change, right? Because then someone brought up another thing. I'm like, oh, I don't have that in there. Where can I put that? And then adding that brought this whole different dimension to the book again through the writing process. And it was funny too, because I've also written a novel, which is where I have to do character development. But my husband's, you need to get that out before this book. And I went, no, you don't understand. This book needs to come out before that book. And it was trusting myself on that and investing in that, that I was like, yes, this is where I need to move forward. This is what I need to do. And the other book will come. That's the next book I'm working on. But at the same time, I had to, like I said, I got the kick in the back. This had to become the priority. And there's always a reason for that. And it's coming clear because now I'm meant to teach this as well. And now that's going to become a part of my what I teach my clients, what I teach at retreats, what I teach as workshops. So it needed to happen and it needed to cement my belief in myself at the same time.
Certainly, and we're looking forward to everything that you will be teaching in the future. So thank you very much. And for entrepreneurs, especially for women who may be going through that burnout and or not sure and not being able to trust their inner guidance, someone who is on that hamster wheel of doing and not listening, how can your book help them?
It'll just give you some insight into practices to connect back with yourself. Because when you get to know yourself, which is why there's that foundation, when you know yourself really well and you start to learn to listen to yourself, It's really powerful. I've also put in there a truth muscle testing process, which is funny because I got taught from my mentor. This is how I develop my gifts. But then it kept showing up in other books as well. So I was like, it needs to go in there. And it's just a simple kinesiology thing of show me yes, show me no. But that can be enough to help start to anchor in you, trusting your intuition and trusting the inner voice and knowing how to discern between the voice in your head and the voice from your heart. And once you can get that discernment, then it's easier to start to listen to that voice from your heart because you know which is which. And don't get me wrong, the ego likes to play with you a little bit and will try and change so it sounds like the voice in the heart because it doesn't like being ignored either. But it's then you just come back to your heart space and you reconnect in. So, for anyone who is going through burnout or feeling like, am I crazy thinking this book will bring you back to yourself because it has these anchoring practices that will allow you to come back to yourself and allow you to start to trust yourself again as well.
Thank you for sharing. Like I said, I am really looking forward to reading it. And for everyone out there who is watching or listening, do yourself a favour, click on those links below and order Catherine's book today. So thank you. And Catherine, before we wrap up, just the last few questions. I'd love to know if you could go back to a younger version of you who was burning out. What would you say to her now?
Ugh, get rid of this company. Holding on. Stop holding on. Like that's the thing. Stop holding on and surrender. And trust. And that is one of my big lessons that I have come to learn this lifetime is you have to trust. You have to trust. Yeah.
And what does life feel like now for you, especially on an emotional and energetic level? You are trusting.
Most days I'm such in such peace and calm despite everything happening around me. And I've noticed that my intuition has taken it another notch when I'll just know things before they even happen. And it's just magic to start to witness that element of things, but also how being in motherhood, being in that nurturing role can also be perfectly right for you. And you don't always have to have what society tells you. I heard this thing of a woman with a career or a career woman. You can be a woman with a career. You can be mum with a career. You don't have to be a career mum if you don't want to be. Honor what's your highest value and honor what's right for you. So energetically, I've been a lot better. Although it's coming up to my birthday, so I've had this quite like sun death, so it's been really weird. But in saying that, I know that everything's shifting and everything will keep evolving. And it's almost like this trust and openness that things are going to start to align even more.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, before we wrap up, we've talked about your book and it's available on Amazon
Yes.
and your website.
Yes.
Tell us more about your actual coaching business.
Yeah, so this is evolving as I evolve, but essentially, I have the ability to tap into someone's highest timeline or their highest potential, and I can help recalibrate their energy to get them to that point. And what that involves is leading them back to themselves so they can heal from within. And the magic of that is that I can do any intuitive healing practice that they need. And this is about being willing to change and also open. So I don't put a cap on what I can do. I just allow the guidance to come through. And it can be anything from ancestral generational work, inner child work. It can be working with plants, working with colors, working with animals, working with the DNA in the quantum realm. It's whatever comes through. And by being just holding that sacred space and allowing that person to be wherever they need to be in that moment and seeing them as whole, but also that they want to evolve their soul to the next level, that can be really powerful in itself. Essentially, if you need help with your business, hey, let's tap into that and see energetically what's happening. If you need help with your family, let's look at that. If you need help with yourself, let's look at that too. So it's definitely whatever you need to get to live your highest version of yourself. That is what I'm about.
Thank you. And again, we will be putting all your links below. So for everyone who is watching or listening, do yourself a favor and click on those links. Reach out to Catherine. You never know where it's going to take you. And go grab the book. Thank you. The last question, Catherine, is there any question that I could have asked you?
Is there any question?
How would
I
it,
actually got asked the best question the other day, and it was, what is the motto you live your life by every day? And I really like this question because it's how I set up my mindset. And my thing is, be the change you want to see in the world. Because when you can be the change, it inspires you to take action and it inspires you to have the courage to keep following your intuition and take the next step forward. You can talk about the change, you can see the change, but when you know better, choose to do better, and then you'll keep evolving and you can inspire those around you. You don't underestimate who's watching you and who is seeing you on your journey and who you're inspiring and allowing them to shift into their true self as well.
we totally agree. Be the change that we want to see in ourselves, in other people, in the world. When we change ourselves, the world will change.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. Like I said, it's been an honor. I am so looking forward to reading your book. I'm really grateful that we're going to be doing the Empowered Entrepreneurs Tribe in a few days' time. So for anyone out there who wants to know about the Empowered Entrepreneurs that Catherine is hosting, again, click on the links, reach out to us. But this whole conversation is about you, Catherine, and about your book. So thank you ever so much for coming on the
Thank,
Pathways to Wellbeing.
thank you for having me, Sophia. It's been a delight.
Wow, what another wonderful conversation that we've just experienced with Catherine, who shared her journey from being burnt out to now becoming a leadership coach, an intuitive healer, as well as a brand new author with her book, The Pillars for Life, a guide to spiritual ethics and practice. Find out more on all the pillars and everything that else that Catherine has to offer by clicking on those links below. At Sacred You, we are committed to creating a space where women from all over the world can support, uplift, and empower each other. Visit our website to explore upcoming workshops, events, and community offerings. Check us out at www.sacredu, that's the letter U, .love. And as always, if this episode spoke to you, please subscribe to our podcast, share it with a friend, or leave us review. And in Catherine's own words, take some time to check in with your heart first. Listen to your intuition in your heart, then your gut, and be the change you want to see in the world. Until next time, stay grounded, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep walking your pathway to well-being.